Good evening. Want to welcome everybody to, I guess this is going to be our first annual live NFL mock draft. This is for the first round and the first round only. I'm joined tonight by our stellar draft analyst here at MMOS Sports, Mr. Owen Riese. What's going on, Owen?
Getting excited ahead of the Chicago time.
All right, man. So what we're gonna do tonight. We're gonna go through the entire first round. We're gonna alternate picks for those of you that are listening. As always, with anything we do, we want to hear what you guys have to say. So just tweet us at My Mind on Sports throughout this whole through this first round, and we'll share your thoughts. And if you have any questions, I'll pass them along to Owen, and we will discuss them right here live on air. All right, so Owen with the first overall pick in the 2015 draft. You, as the GM of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you are selecting
Jameis Winston. He's the franchise quarterback in this draft. The Buccaneers have holes everywhere, but unless they think they want to get out of this pick, it's got to be Winston. He's got all the intangibles. He's got the size. He's got the arm strength. He's got the pro style experience. He's got everything you're looking for. He's got the swagger you're looking for out of a franchise quarterback, and I think he'll be a real good one for a long time.
I definitely agree. I can't knock you for taking Jameis at all. I don't think anybody can knock you for that. All right. As the Tennessee Titans GM with the second overall pick, I'm gonna go Marcus Mariota. And the reason I'm going Marcus Mariota is we all know no matter how much you build the team, the guy under center matters a lot. And the last time they had a good quarterback was the late Steve McNair. And, they had a decent defense last year. You can't keep building this team and just waiting around for a quarterback. You have a chance this year to take a guy, and you have room to groom him. Ken Wisenhunt's, he's been down this road before. Everybody wants to remember back in Pittsburgh with Big Ben, you have a defense, you get you a solid run game, and you bring the quarterback along slowly. And who knows, just by virtue of him being who he is, his unique talents might win you a couple games late. But at least you know what you have, 10, 15 years down the road, if that is your guy. And I mean, if you think about the gap of what they've had at that position since McNair, why not? You'd have to be a fool to just ignore that opportunity right now. So that's just me where I'm coming from as the GM of the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at since Steve McNair went to Baltimore, they've had Vince Young and Kerry Collins, which were the only two that they've had any kind of success with at all. And I think that was probably 5 years ago now. So they've really been middling, trying to struggle and find their quarterback. So I think as much as Leonard Williams might be tempting here to kind of add to that elite front seven, I think they have to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you wholeheartedly. As you said, you still have a pretty good defensive line. Like you have Jarrell Casey. While adding a Leonard Williams would be great, you still won't have a quarterback. No disrespect to Mr. Mettenberger, but you don't have that guy. And as we've seen, you need that guy. You don't. You're a franchise in question until you know what you have under center. It's kind of a big deal. All right, you're the Jacksonville Jaguars. What are you doing with the third overall pick, sir?
I'm probably going to go with Vic Beasley. I know that's not the popular pick among most of the experts or analysts, but to me, Vic Beasley is the best pass rusher in this draft. And I know not even just these last couple of years, but usually it's kind of a trend. Jacksonville really struggles rushing the passer. And now they're in this division with Andrew Luck and a mobile quarterback at that. So it's even worse than when Peyton was here as far as the need to get to the quarterback. So I think with Gus Bradley's defense that he brought over from Seattle, they have that Leo position. I know last year we thought maybe Khalil Mack would be the pick for that spot. They ended up taking Chris Smith from Arkansas in like the 4th or 5th round as maybe a project there last year. He didn't get any playing time as a rookie. So I see them with the opportunity to take Vic Beasley and really kind of find a real difference maker on that defense, which really has been filled with some pretty solid draft picks late in the draft, but there aren't any bell cows on that defense. So if you can get Vic Beasley, he's got a chance to be a real impact player. He's my number 2 player on the board. So I think with that opportunity to have a difference maker like that on defense for a team that so sorely needs it, I think you can't pass that up.
I definitely would agree with you. Um, you can't, and you got to think about it. Even with them having, I believe Gus Bradley's there, right? Formerly coming from the Seattle staff, it's kind of like getting. Again, I don't mean to disparage anybody, but you're getting, in my eyes, a better Bruce Irvin, a way better
A
Bruce
lot.
Irvin. Yeah, thank you. I was trying to be, politically correct about it, but Bruce Irvin caused damage in Seattle defense in a row, and Vic Beasley's 10 times the prospect that Bruce Irvin is. And you think about Jacksonville wasn't horrible last year. They didn't win games, but it was a tremendous step in the right direction compared to the last like 10 years of just being trash. So you get Vic Beasley in there. That's a huge piece. As you know, we all know it's a passing league. Pass rushing's at a premium. You get a guy like that, you have him for the next 10 years. That's great. And then you can fix the rest, but at least you know you can get after the passer, especially in that division.
Right. And when you have that one thing you can hang your hat on, he will rust the passer. From that point, you can fix the secondary, you can fix other parts, you can try and get that offense to start scoring some points. But if you have that constant, the thing that will be there, that can be huge. As we saw last year in Baltimore, their secondary was absolutely ravaged. But if you can get to the quarterback, you can mask a lot of issues. And I think that's the biggest and best step that Jacksonville can take right now to become even more competitive. Because you're right, they could have probably fairly easily been 6-10 maybe last year, which is a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah, they were in, whether a lot of people realize, obviously, it's not like people voluntarily wake up and turn on Jacksonville games every Sunday when you're thinking, yeah, I'm going to get up and watch a full day of football. But yeah, I mean, they were in a lot of winnable games if they had the requisite talent, and they didn't. They have a chance right now to, upgrade that roster, and you can't pass on something like that. You just can't. All right, so moving on, we are at the fourth pick, I believe, the Oakland Raiders. It's hard for me to make this decision, but after getting Michael Crabtree, I am not thinking about Amari Cooper there anymore because I'm thinking you already got to have a route runner guy, a route runner possession type guy. If I'm them and I know there's a lot of, I know Leonard Williams is right there, I'm probably going Kevin White, as crazy as it sounds. I'm going Kevin White because you already have your guy in Derek Carr. Last year, they're kind of a step ahead of Jacksonville. We're just talking about Jacksonville. When you have your guy under center, you were in several games. They just didn't have any middle ground last year in Oakland. They were either beating a really good team, or they looked like the Oakland Raiders that we've got to know for like the last 5 or 6 seasons. But they're talented. They have a very good young quarterback, and he did it last year without great pieces on the perimeter. They have some fun pieces, and Marcel Reese. You throw Crabtree out there, you get you a true number one. And Michael Crabtree, bless his heart, he's not a number one guy. But if he's your number two, you really don't. You're in a great place. Like honestly, you're in a wonderful place if he's your number two. As a number one, you're in trouble. But that's not the case. You have a chance to get a number one. And Kevin White, 6'3", great body, and you can go downfield. You have Rivera at tight end. You still have Reese. You have speed out there, but I mean, think about what that gives you downfield. This draft is deep in terms of defense. You can go plugging guys on defense later. You have Khalil Mack. You have C.O. Moore. Your defense wasn't horrible. So I'm going Kevin White from the Oakland Raiders.
Okay, yeah, and he's the highest upside out of any of the top receivers. I have him as my number 2. I believe he's a little less polished than both Cooper and Devontae Parker from Louisville, but White presents that upside. He's a height, weight, speed guy, which I know the Raiders always love, even if he isn't a number 1 quality wide receiver immediately, even if you have 1 or 2 number 2 wide receivers for Derek Carr, that's a lot more than he had last year.
Yes, it is.
And they added Trent Richardson for what that's worth. I'm still a little a believer in him. I think that in the right situation, if you give him some carries, he can still be maybe not a number 3 overall valuable player, but I think he can be a valuable pick. And like you said, with Michael Rivera at tight end, and they signed Rodney Hudson, the Kansas City center. for big money in the offseason. So he should be able to improve that running game, and anything to help Derek Carr at this point is pretty paramount.
Okay, with the one of the hometown teams here, the Washington Redskins, with the 5th overall pick, should they keep it? Where are you going with this selection, Owen?
Well, we talked about this last night, and they picked up Robert Griffin III's option. So what better way to help him succeed than to protect him? His rookie season, when he had the most success, the offense was extremely simplified, extremely catered to the run game, using their good old line, playing to their strengths, and then sucking in the defense and letting Robert Griffin throw it as far as he can. So, in an effort to do that, if I'm the Redskins, I'm going to take Lyle Collins, the tackle out of LSU, and play him at right tackle, immediately. If he doesn't work at tackle, he can play either guard spot, and he'll be a Pro Bowler. He's got a nasty demeanor. He's 6'4" and 305 pounds. He lacks the length to play left tackle like he did in college. Like I said, he's nasty. He plays mean, and he can cater to that running game to help RG3 succeed. I guess worth a note, Lyle Collins was pulled from the draft as far as being present in Chicago. They're having some legal issues with him. Apparently, one of his ex-girlfriends is dead. From what we understand, he's not being considered a suspect. I've heard some teams are completely taking him off of their boards. Until anything else comes out, I wouldn't do that, and I still see him probably as the best offensive lineman in the draft. So, with that being said, the Redskins are taking Lyle Collins to play right tackle, and if nothing else, either guard and excelling at it.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, whether they go Lyle Collins or Brandon Scherf there. I kind of think back to what the Niners did. I think Singletary was still coach. I'm not sure if McLuhan was still GM or if it was Balky, but either way, even if it was Balky as his understudy, that first round where everybody was like, why did you go up and get Anthony Davis and Mike Iupati in the same draft? And at that time, they had Joe Staley, and they were reworking. They were kind of similar position as the Redskins, where you had a quarterback, you had a running back, and offensively, at least the Redskins have Deshaun Jackson. The Niners didn't have that, like remotely close to that at that time. And the first thing they went to do, again, I'm sorry, I forgot who the GM is, but the same philosophy there is evident, and I that's why I wholeheartedly agree with you. You go get a right tackle, and if you think about what McLuhan's done in Seattle and San Francisco, you go get 2 tackles, you get a guy that can play center, and the guards, it really doesn't matter. He just wants big maulers that take up space, even if, they get beat, they have bad technique, and they don't move great, but it's going to take you a while to get around them. You're in a good place when you have 2 stellar tackles next to you and an above-average center. And that goes a long way, when we're talking about RG3, as you said. If he's a play action quarterback, that's what he thrives on. You can't do that without blocking up front.
Right, and Jay Gruden coming from Cincinnati before he took the head job here in Washington, he had an excellent offensive line, and those guards the tackles were bigger in Cincinnati, but the guards were very, very good at run blocking, and I think Gruden will recognize as much as anybody the quarterback's best friend, especially if you don't have like elite weapons. Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garcon are pretty good, but as far as making things easier for your quarterback, an offensive line will go a long way. So I do believe that McLaughlin was the GM. That was his last year as a GM.
Right, because I think that was Singletary's last year too, right?
Yeah, before they got Balky and Harbaugh.
Okay, so yeah, but I definitely agree with you. You got to go offensive line if you're Washington. I think it's going to be a big I can't wait to see when they're done with their draft. I want to go back and look at the Niners 2010 draft and just see if there's any parallels, and I'm sure there will be. But I'm looking forward to doing that once, come Sunday when the smoke is cleared from the draft being done. All right, on to the New York Jets. Decisions here. A lot of people have pass rushers here. If I'm the Jets, I'm thinking I already have arguably one of the most dominant defensive lines in all of football. Rushing the passer isn't exactly my biggest concern if I'm the Jets. I might go Brandon Scherf here. And the reason being, you just went and got Brandon Marshall. You have Brandon Marshall, Eric Decker. You have one of the most underrated guys in the league in the slot in Curley. He's not a bad player at all. And when you think about it, if he's going to be the guy in between big old Brandon Marshall and big old Eric Decker, he's going to have more than ample room to work with. You have J.C. Amaro out there at tight end. You got to fix – and I think they have serviceable running backs, but to piggyback off the RG3 thing, we have no idea what Geno Smith is if we haven't seen him behind a capable NFL line. So before we can make a decision and determine he's a good quarterback, he's average, he's a bust, give him his proper tools to either fail or succeed, and then we can accurately make that decision. But until you do that, I mean, it's just a whole bunch of questions and what ifs, coulds, and everything else that's just kind of irrelevant. And I'm going Scherf because you just took Collins off my board.
Well, and I like that Scherf pick too, because when the Jets got good, when Rex Ryan got there, they put this emphasis on power running, and they had Mark Sanchez, so it was making it easier for the quarterback. He had some weapons. They got him Santonio Holmes and Braylon Edwards, which aren't the same, but similar duo to Decker and to Marshall. The only other thing I could see them doing here, if it's not the offensive line, would be going like Dante Fowler or Bud Dupree. Todd Bowles really likes big body outside linebackers, and those two definitely fit the bill there. I know I tweeted it a while ago, but as far as the Jets are concerned, they've added a lot of talent to that defense, especially in the secondary. So if you're not going to go Scherf, if you go front seven, Geno Smith doesn't have to score very many points if you don't give any up. And with the Jets adding, I think they got Cromartie back again, and they had Darrelle Revis. They signed Buster Skrine from Cleveland. They got Marcus Gilchrist from the Chargers. And like you said, the defensive line is very good. If they don't go offensive line, they could definitely go outside linebacker and really make that defense scary good.
Yeah, I can't knock you for that either. When you think about it, you reunited Revis Island and Alcatraz. They're back together. You're going to get Calvin Pryor back there. Marcus Gilchrist is a guy that's pretty much overlooked. He's a solid starter. You put him back there with Pryor, all of a sudden you have one of the league's better secondaries, and that's just looking at the two guys you have on the outside. Say D. Milner figures it out. You have a third corner. Now all of a sudden, you're cooking now. You're A-okay. And if you want to go ahead and get a dynamic pass rusher, I can't judge you for that. I'm not going to knock you at all. So I could see both sides of it there. All right, on to the next pick. I just had the Jets, so you have the Bears at 7.
Okay, so this one's pretty near and dear to me. One of my roommates is a Bears fan, and he's been pretty frustrated with what's going on. They're headed in the right direction. They got Adam Pace from New Orleans. They got John Fox and Vic Fangio, two of the better coaches in the league, and they signed Antrell Roll. They got Mason Foster from Tampa Bay, a few other pieces. I'm not a huge fan of Danny Shelton. I've seen him here a lot. At number 7, I don't think he's worth that. He's got weight issues. He had a lot of production in college, but he was also playing with 2 other All-Americans, which makes things a little easier. The Bears could go in a few directions here, but I think they go Leonard Williams. He's still on the board. He's my top player overall, and he's still on the board here at 7. I can't think of a better marriage than for Vic Fangio to get a piece like that, and then where you can, maybe give him that Justin Smith type of attacking 5 technique, let Leonard Williams use his athleticism and really disrupt things and make things a little easier for the linebackers until they can add all the talent that they want to.
Yeah, I definitely can't knock that at all. I was thinking more. We didn't have Dante Fowler gone yet, right?
No.
Okay, I was thinking Dante Fowler to the Bears. The reason being just because with Vic, with the 4 years in San Francisco, they didn't really there wasn't a difference between defensive tackles and defensive ends there. So you get a piece like Fowler where you can plug and play. I think of him, he kind of reminds me of Terrell Suggs a little bit in terms of his versatility. You can just plug him in all over a defense, and that becomes a fun piece, especially since you don't know what you have at linebacker in a 3-4 in Chicago yet. Outside of maybe Mason Foster, you're just not sure yet. I'm okay with what they have up front, with Ray McDonald. That's somebody who's familiar with the system. obviously. But yeah, I'm kind of thinking Fowler, but I definitely see what you're saying. So you couldn't go wrong either way. But you have to put talent on the defense side of that ball now, especially when you transition to a 3-4. It's kind of important. We've seen so many people, so many defenses try to go to a 3-4 and kind of skip a couple steps, and it doesn't quite work. Washington, and now you have to redo it. So I could definitely see where you're coming from on that.
When they went and they oversigned Pernell McPhee from Baltimore, I mean, he's a good sign, but so I can't knock you for trying to add as much pass rushing talent as you can, because your free agent acquisition, which I don't think they necessarily signed him to be their lead, money making pass rusher, but yeah, they definitely need more help on the outside there too.
Yeah, I mean, if you have McPhee and you draft a young guy, having McPhee as your second guy, if you think of McPhee as your Ahmad Brooks in this 3-4, that's not a bad thing if that's that pass rusher over there. Long as you find your dominant guy. And I think my biggest thing is I don't know who's going to play middle linebacker for them. And you can kind of figure you can probably address some guys later on in the draft, but this whole mini camp, you're gonna have to figure out Kasim Green, Bostic, all these guys, Christian Jones, who can play next to Mason Foster. And while you're figuring that out, it behooves you to get a pass rusher. So, you figure out what's going on, because I like the secondary. You're obviously Peanut's not there anymore, but you got your next number one guy in Fuller. Jennings is still there. I mean, it's not a great year for safety, so it is what it is. But
they signed Antrell Roll too.
Thanks.
And the biggest thing as far as inside goes, the article that just dropped today, there isn't a whole lot of elite talent, especially at number 7 for inside linebackers, and the top off-ball non-pass rushing linebackers are really like 4-3 linebackers in like the will spot too. So they can definitely address the meat of this draft later. It also wouldn't surprise me, to wrap this up, if the Bears traded out of this and went to get more picks either.
I definitely agree with you that I don't think they're going to be there. I don't think they're going to be picking at 7. I don't think the Redskins are going to be picking at 5. But before we get out of here tonight, we'll touch on that real quick. So you had, remind me again who you had.
Leonard Williams.
Yeah, Leonard Williams at 7, which that's not bad at all. I mean, think about it. You get Ray McDonald and Leonard Williams, your defensive line. I could live with that for a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
And longer for Leonard Williams, obviously. All right, on to the Falcons. Decisions here. I'm going to go – I know everything's up with Shane Ray and everything else. I'm going Shane Ray here for Atlanta. You haven't had a good pass rusher since John Abraham. You really haven't found a guy. You tried to move Corey Bierman out and make him a edge rusher, and you failed. Okay, it didn't work. They have their new guy out of the Seattle coaching tree all of a sudden. So they're going to need to rush the passer. That's kind of sort of what they do well. They cover and they rush the passer. And it works in tandem. And right now, I'm okay with Atlanta's young secondary, but we really do know they have nothing remotely close to a capable pass rusher on their roster.
Yeah, and that's that Vic Beasley Leo position in Dan Quinn's defense too. And I know when he came out in his press conference, he basically said, we're pretty comfortable with the guys we've got, but we're gonna do what we do, and we're gonna do it very well. These schemes aren't very complex. You don't see very many exotic blitzing schemes or anything coming out of these Seattle defenses. They're pretty plain. They're pretty vanilla. They just kind of roll with who they've got, and they say, well, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it really well. So try and stop it. So if they like Ray there, I know a lot of the Falcon guys I follow on Twitter won't be very happy with that. But if they take Ray to be that Leo rusher, with Vic and Fowler gone, it's either Ray or Dupree or Randy Gregory if you're going to do it. But with Gregory's not only his marijuana concerns, there are also some talk going on that Randy Gregory is maybe not right mentally either. They know he talked about the smoking the weed as a way of coping with the stress of this process. And it's kind of one of those things where if you can't handle this process, how are you going to handle doing this for a job full time? So yeah, I guess they need to address that pass rusher. The only other place they could maybe go would be Todd Gurley, I've seen, and that would make a lot of the hometown folks happy. But yeah, I can't. Shane Ray's a pretty solid pick here.
Okay. You're up next with the New York Giants.
Okay, so the New York Giants, they started last year absolutely awful, and then they kind of got it turned around. That Ben McAdoo, the former Green Bay quarterback coach, got the offense going, and then Odell Beckham decided to like explode, and then all of a sudden become an elite wide receiver. So they've got the outside. They've got Victor Cruz coming back, hopefully. Um, One way you could have gone with this would be Kevin White, but the way I'll do it is with the uncertainty of I don't think they want to double dip, but with the uncertainty of Victor Cruz coming back from an injury like that, I think they go Amari Cooper here. They give Eli more talent and say, well, you're in the second year of the system now. Let's see what you can really do if you could potentially have Cooper, Cruz, and Odell Beckham.
And I'm sorry, folks that are watching, but I agree wholeheartedly. Had this been my selection right here, I'm going Cooper. You can't. Last year, you had Odell Beckham fall to you. This year, Cooper may fall to you. You have to be an idiot to let that pass you by. Like, your other needs you can address later. But these are two guys, you get two guys under 22 years old or whatever, and you have them for Eli now and post Eli. So even if you don't re-up with Eli, your future quarterback walks in that door with Odell Beckham and Amari Cooper. It's not a bad life. You know what I'm saying?
Amari Cooper's only 20 years old. He was a true junior at Alabama. So you're getting an elite talent who his pro ceiling might not be very, very high, but he's probably already pretty close to it. So his floor is very high. So although like the Alabama kind of concern, well, they might already be as good as they're going to get. Amari Cooper is, as a 20-year-old, is easily an above-average starter at wide receiver in the NFL. The only other place I could really see them going would taking like Andrews Pete from Stanford here. Jerry Reese is still their GM. He loves drafting offensive and defensive linemen, especially high. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they went there, but I think Cooper's the right move.
Yeah, I was thinking about an offensive lineman, but if Amari Cooper's sitting right there, I'm no longer thinking about said offensive lineman. I'm going, right. Ooh, him and Odell Beckham, yay. Especially when you think about, what Odell did for Eli and vice versa. It was great for Eli having that, especially after Victor went down. You still had a number one wide receiver on your team. After, coming into the year, your number one guy went down. And now you get Cooper. Victor Cruz becomes an added bonus. How about that?
Yeah, exactly.
That's not a bad thing to have. Your third wheel is Victor Cruz. Okay, so we're at number 10. This is assuming that the Rams stay here. I'm looking at the Rams, and on defense, I don't think you really need to jump out and go get anything right now at this point. I'm probably going Devontae Parker because Kevin White's gone and Cooper just got taken. They have to get a wide receiver. Like in that division, outside of the Cardinals, the other three teams don't have receivers.
Yeah.
Prior to like maybe this offseason with some people making moves, but prior to this year, Arizona had all the wide receivers in this division for like 4 years running. Like before, back in, I can't even say back in the day, but before Anquan went to Baltimore, they had Anquan and Larry. Nobody else had anything like that. Anquan leaves, you got Larry, then now you ended up with Mike Floyd and Larry. And then the two Brown kids, John and Jerron Brown, they're the only ones in that division that are overflowing with talent in terms of pass catchers. Everybody else is kind of the same thing. You're lucky if you have an elite tight end, a freakish athletic tight end, and I mean on outside you just hope somebody makes a play. But if you're the Rams, think about how many games you were in with that outstanding defense. You had, again, arguably one of the league's best defensive lines, and you didn't really get rolling until 7 weeks in. So offensively, you probably got your best quarterback you've had in terms of he'll at least be on the field, and Nick Foles, knock on wood. Sam Bradford, he always was hurt. So you get Nick Foles, he's on the field. They have a very impressive stable of running backs. So that's not really anything to look at. And you think about you get a number one guy with all those complementary wide receivers in St. Louis. You have an offense, and that team goes from being at the bottom of that division to it's going to be hell for those teams to get out of that division now. It already is, but it's going to be even worse.
Yeah, I can honestly see. Well, I don't think San Francisco is going to be very good. I'm sorry. They lost a lot of talent, and depending on how Balky decides to retool everything with Jim Tomsula as the coach, yeah, I think the top three teams could easily have 10 wins in this division, which is absolutely scary. Um, I like Parker here. Like I said, he's my number two wide receiver. He's a lot more polished, or three rather. He's a lot more polished as a route runner than Kevin White. I think he provides a little more immediate pro help, especially for Nick Foles. Will be coming in there, just coming over from Philadelphia. He'll be kind of a back in a pro style scheme. So getting him the most receiver help that you could definitely can't hurt. It also wouldn't surprise me if they start to look at a tackle also, because although it's kind of been kind of like what we talked about last night, like a lazy mock to just give them a tackle the last few years. They signed Jake Long a couple of years ago, but it's becoming pretty quickly evident he's not the player he was when he was taken first overall 8 years ago. So you look at that. They drafted Greg Robinson last year. He's a big, nasty road grader. I don't want him at tackle because he's a holding penalty waiting to happen. So if you
Yes.
maybe give them an Andrus Pete and then you leave Robinson inside to just smash people, you've got Roger Saffold, I think, is the other tackle. So I mean, you can make that work. But no, you can't complain with Devontae Parker going to the Rams because I'm pretty sure their best wide receiver is Kenny Britt.
Yeah. And I mean,
So
that's the most unreliable person in the world.
right,
Um,
the only reason he's on the team is because Jeff drafted him in Tennessee.
and think about how bad you are. You're in dire straits if you're looking to carry Kenny Britt, I'm sorry, as the guy at that position. Because everybody else is, I mean, they just scream number two, number three, number four.
Well, and they drafted Tavon Austin at number 7 a couple of years ago, which is Tavon's a good like athlete and player, but he's so tough because you get those guys who are like slot, like gadget kind of players, and you have to like manufacture touches for them because they're not going to beat a corner to get open. You have to be end arounds or the West Virginia little touch pass and other things like that. So although they really just spent a first rounder a couple of years ago on that, that doesn't help their quarterback much. So I think Devontae Parker is a much more worthwhile selection to give Nick Foles some help.
Yeah, and even with Tavon, as you said, is one of those gadget guys. Those guys, their success is definitely predicated on what's on the perimeter. So, Tavon really hasn't been able to do anything because there's nobody out there on the perimeter to scare a defense. You are that guy for opposing defenses. So if you're a gadget guy as is, your room to operate is, especially in that division, is drastically taken away when nobody else, nobody else shows up on the radar of guys I have to game plan for. You go, oh, speed, you, only you.
Right.
So, that's why I go Devontae Parker there. All right, up next, that leaves Teddy Bridgewater in an interesting place. He was a pick away from possibly reuniting with his college wide receiver. So Minnesota Vikings, what do you do with the 11th pick?
Yeah, that's a good point because I was going to take Devontae Parker there to give him his wide receiver from college back. But okay, so you're the Vikings. You're sitting at 11. Mike Zimmer had a pretty successful first year, I guess, considering Christian Ponder was their opening day quarterback. And with all the Adrian Peterson crap that they dealt with to get, I think there's 6 wins. It's pretty commendable for them. I think they probably go defense here. They drafted Xavier Rhodes in the first round a couple years ago, and I think they probably go corner again. They're pretty set at safeties with Harrison Smith and is it that Abdullah kid? Maybe is there other safety?
I think it's Abdullah.
So they've got Xavier Rhodes on one side. He's 6'2" and 200 pounds. So I think they probably do the same thing because Zimmer came from Cincinnati and they had Terrence Raw or
Newman.
Leon Hall and Terrence Newman and Jonathan Joseph over there when they were real good. So I think they probably go corner. And from what I've heard, if I'm the GM, I'm probably taking Marcus Peters, but from what I've heard, they're probably going to take Trey Waynes. He really likes Waynes. I think he likes that speed. Um, and so I guess I'm going to take Waynes here. Probably he's definitely the fastest corner out of the top corners. He struggles with penalties because he like face guards the whole time. He doesn't.
Yeah.
He's not a zone corner, so he's like a press man guy, which is fine if you help him with that. So I think they go Trey Waynes here. They get the speedster from Michigan State and start to, the more pressure you can take off the front seven. They drafted Anthony Barr last year, who's an animal, and you pair him with Everson Griffin and a couple of those guys up front. They make the secondary's job a little easier too. So I think I go with Trey Waynes here.
Okay, I definitely agree with you. I don't see Minnesota right now dealing with anybody with character concerns, but I'm on board with you as far as Marcus Peters goes. That's my number one corner, far and away. I like Trey Waynes, but it's kind of like, I think, what was it, when Prince Amukamara came out? I was one of the guys, as soon as the first time I saw him, I was just like, ooh, bad hips. I don't like it. Don't like that guy. And Trey Waynes is the same thing that's jumped up to me. I was like, ooh, bad hips. And the face guarding issue, Lord, that's a whole nother thing where he has to figure that out. But tight hips just aren't good right now, especially how much you're going to be on the field and how offense can dictate matchups. If they know, believe us, they know if a guy has tight hips, they're going to find you. They're going to make sure that you do everything but cover in a straight line where you can show off that 4-3 straight line speed. Going to have jerk routes, all that fun stuff where you're going to be got off the first move because, it's going to take you a step to get back into the route. And in the NFL, that's all it takes. A step that's a world of difference than in college football. So I'm with you on that.
Well, and like last year, Darqueze Dennard went to the Bengals out of Michigan State, and Michigan State's scheme, they play a lot of press man, and they have the rest of the defense to make up for it. But in the NFL, they're under so much more pressure. You might force Waynes to play like more off man, which is really not his strength at all. So that'll be interesting for sure.
Right. To the Cleveland Browns, and right here, I have no idea what they're doing. I honestly believe they're trading up. But for the sake of what we're doing, they're staying at 12. I'm looking at the Browns. I'm probably not going to touch anything on that defense. I kind of sort of actually like their defense. The thing is here, the wide receivers are gone. You don't really have any wide receivers out there. I don't think you want to go crazy and take someone too high, but if you do, I'd probably go Rashad Perryman here just to get a guy that can stretch a defense, the bigger body Torrey Smith. I go Rashad Perryman just right here just because I think to a lot of people his stock has risen, but at that time it's a deep wide receiver class. So now you're getting to kind of the second tier. Because of character concerns, I don't think they're a team, especially after Josh Gordon, where you even remotely think about Dorial Green Beckham. You just can't do it right now. I would also think about I always mess up his last name, but Nelson Agholor from USC.
Agholor, yeah.
I would think about him, but I'm just thinking right now, I don't see that deep threat that they have. I probably think about Rashad Perryman right there.
Yeah, and that's a good pick. Like I said, it's a little higher than I would take Perriman, but they're in a tough spot there that none of their like immediate needs are really available. They don't have a person there that's really worth that value. Cleveland's wide receivers are terrible, especially without Josh Gordon. So that definitely addresses a need. I've never been a believer in that you become a better wide receiver because you run a 4.2 at your pro day. And Perriman drops a lot of passes, but this is kind of the only thing that really makes sense here right now. Unless you wanted to you couldn't. It'd be too high to take like Kevin Johnson or something. But really, Marcus Peters again here would work. You have Joe Hayden, Justin Gilbert really struggled last year. You lost Buster Screen, maybe a corner's in play. But yeah, Perriman's really kind of what you need as far as an offense. They have like Miles Austin and Brian Hartline and Andrew Hawkins and Taylor Gabriel, who are both like 5'6". So, yeah, I mean, Perriman's a big guy, and they've seen what Torrey Smith can do in their own division, so that definitely wouldn't surprise me if they did that.
Yeah, and the only reason, I was thinking Rashard Perryman is just because of the awkward position that they're in.
Yeah.
The top guys that are clean as far as character-wise goes, they're not there anymore. You can't dabble. You can't take a risk to dabble in another character situation where obviously you can't handle it with Josh, and you could even handle Justin Gilbert last year. So that's why I would go, okay, I'm taking Marcus Peters, but you couldn't figure out, you couldn't get Justin Gilbert to mature. That's an issue that you're still working on. So that's why I kind of walked away from that. But that was just my reasoning for that pick. But up next, the New Orleans Saints.
Okay. Well, not to go back on that, but they could take Danny Shelton too, I guess.
It's true.
But anyway, so okay, so the Saints are kind of a mess. I couldn't really tell because it looked like they were trying to completely rebuild during the offseason. They traded away Jimmy Graham and traded Kenny Stills. And there was all this speculation that like Drew Brees doesn't have any arm anymore and can't throw. Mark Ingram had a solid year last year. They picked up Donnell Ellerbe from the Dolphins for Stills. So they're kind of in one of those unique situations where they can kind of use a lot. This might be somewhere where maybe that Andrus Peat goes. They've got Teron Armstead at left tackle. At right tackle, they're kind of hurting. I think, what was it? That Stinchcomb maybe is still over there. They could use some help. Or no, Zach Strief. They could use some help, though, and get younger. I'm not as high on Pete as most are, just because I think he's really soft. But he's very good technically. He's got the frame you want. And if you're gonna roll with Breeze, other than I've seen them maybe trying to get Mariota if he drops, but in this circumstance, I'd probably take Pete, just try and help Breeze out as much as you can, and give him another pass protector to try and help him find his receivers.
Okay. The first guy to jump to mind for me was just because they have so many needs, and their defense is special. I was thinking maybe Bud Dupree there, but either way, like with them, it's just a grab back for them. Like it's hard to narrow a guy when they need so many things. Like you had like a 40% fire sale, so we don't know what who are we to tell you what you don't need at this point when you got rid of so many wonderful things. Like I still can't wrap my mind around getting rid of Kenny Stills. Like he's a rookie. Like I don't care. It's gonna be hard for someone to tell me that was okay. Speaking of which, moving to the Dolphins, Trey Waynes is off the board. I think Lyle Collins is gone as well. I'm going Aguilar here. I know you got Kenny Stills, but after the Mike Wallace fiasco, Tannehill needs weapons. Like it is what it is, and you get another guy, not as fast as Stills, but he understands how to get open. And that's one of the biggest skills I think people overlook when we get all excited about prospect speed and their size. He does what a wide receiver is asked to do. He gets open. He knows how to get open. So you have Kenny Stills with his blazing speed and his ability to get open. You couple that with Aguilar, and now you have a couple weapons. And I think that would definitely assist Tannehill in taking his next step development-wise as a quarterback, and especially for their offense since the Mike Wallace experiment failed miserably.
Yeah, and if I was them, I'd be really, really praying that Kevin White would fall to them to kind of replace that speed guy on the outside. If someone that they don't really have now, they've got Jarvis Landry and Kenny Stills. Stills is like the slot kid who can run and stretch the defense, but they're like I said, I didn't know what New Orleans is doing there, but Miami's in a tough spot too now because, like I said, the guys they're really looking for are gone. Maybe this is where they take like Kevin Johnson,
right? Because of meaning value right there. Well, obviously 14 feels a little too high, but if you take Marcus Peters out of the equation, and I think for some teams you have to because of the character concern, you take him out of the equation. Kevin Johnson moves up.
Yeah.
A lot at that. So I could definitely see that there as well. Okay, you got my Niners, so do as you must.
All right, so I'm gonna do you a favor. The Niners S up front. I'm gonna give you Eric Armstead. He's a big kid from Oregon. He's 6'7". He's 300 pounds. He's got good movement. They lost Justin Smith. They need someone to make a difference along that front seven. Jim Tomsula, as much as I'm going to give him a hard time for basically being a Trent Baalke yes man, he is one of the better defensive line coaches in the league. And if you give someone with this like immense type of upside, I don't think that you can really go wrong. They lost Ray McDonald to the Bears as well as Justin Smith to retirement. Borland and Willis are gone. Bowman hasn't played in over a year. So you're looking, and no one knows what to expect from Aldon Smith ever. So I think if you can add someone like Armstead, who at the very least is a very solid run defender, if you can teach him how to pass rush and use his hands, he can be very good. But at the very least, I think he presents a little bit of that need versus value. As far as like a talent perspective, he's a top 10 kid. That size and that movement ability, I think this is a pretty good value for the Niners, and you didn't look like you were too happy with it, but I think that might be somewhere where they go here.
All right, I'm going Marcus Peters. Trent Baalke breaks his cornerbacks no later than the third round rule for Marcus Peters. You lost your number one corner in Culliver, whether people wanted to accept it or not. Tremaine Brock missed all of last year. Cully was essentially the number one guy, and he balled out last year. The secondary led the league in interceptions. You're going to have to find that guy. You have Dante Johnson and whatnot. You get Marcus Peters, you pair him with Dante Johnson, regardless of Tremaine Brock. Tremaine Brock now becomes a bonus. You have Acker and Riese. I think the biggest thing with San Francisco is nobody knows the other guys' names, which is why I was shaking my head about Eric Armstead. And I do like the kid, but in comparison to the kids that are already there and a lot of people don't know, I don't think he's beating out those kids for the spot behind Ray McDonald. And that's the only reason that I was shaking my head. I do like Eric Armstead. It's just I don't see a point in taking anybody if they can't beat the kids, the kids that have been waiting their turn. And I think that's the biggest thing is Ray McDonald and Justin Smith were so good at their jobs where they played, 70, 80% of the snaps. You never got a chance to see the people behind them. So I think for the most part, a lot of people don't think there's anybody there. Tank Carradine is there. Quentin Dial is there. Those guys got a chance to play last year when Ray went through what he went through and when he was dismissed, and both of them were beyond productive. Glenn Dorsey was hurt last year. Ian Williams still hasn't played. So at defensive line, I just think they're kind of stock. It's just not – they don't have the sexy name that makes people go, okay, they're fine right there, because if Justin doesn't come back, nobody knows the names. A couple of years ago, we were talking about Tank Carradine as one of the better defensive prospects in the entire country. And he's essentially had 2 years, a year and a half to redshirt.
Did he play last year?
He did play last year. He had 3 sacks.
Because I know he sat out the year before, so I didn't know if he played last year or not.
He did. He played at the end of the year, 3 sacks in 5 games.
Okay.
But again, it was one of those things where nobody was paying attention to him at the end of the year because they weren't in the playoffs. After the Seattle whipping, it looked like the masses were officially done, put a fork in San Francisco. But I just don't think it's defensive line for me. I think it's either, as crazy as it sounds, it's one of the guys with character concerns here. It's either Marcus or it's Dorial. And I know it's weird. But I think it's one of the 2 guys with character concerns because I don't think that's a franchise that cares about character concerns. In their mind, they can fix it.
Well, and Trent Baalke likes to think whether or not he is or not, that he likes to try and show people that he's smarter than them. So if he thinks that he can make Peters work, then I can see that for sure.
Yeah, and I just think with that, I think this is the year where it's kind of unconventional because of the depth on that roster. And like I said, at every position, nobody knows the names. And I think that's the biggest thing. If everybody knew it's kind of like in Seattle. If half of the Legion of Boom got hurt, nobody knew who Jerron Johnson was when the Redskins signed him. Like, you got a backup? Well, hold on real quick. If he wasn't in Seattle, that's an above-average NFL starter. It's not his fault that he plays behind Cam Chancellor and arguably the best safety in the league in Earl Thomas. we can't knock him for that. So I just think it's one of those things where a lot of the rosters in that division are loaded. It's just with a bunch of names nobody knows. Nobody has a clue. So just for me, I hope it's not Eric Armstead because I'm probably going to shed a tear tomorrow night if it's Eric Armstead. Just know wherever you are that a part of me died if Eric Armstead is there. No, I mean the only reason is kind of like he's a guy that has to be taught, and why waste time with teaching someone who might not beat the people out in front of him? Where if it, in my mind, if I'm gonna have to deal with somebody where you have to be taught, at least I know you're going to play and learn and be taught at the same time. So that's just me. But on to the Texans and decisions here. You got rid of Andre Johnson. Nuke Hopkins is essentially your guy now. As crazy as this sounds, oh my goodness. I'm going Danny Shelton. He's still here according to us, right?
Yeah.
Danny Shelton's still here. We can't name a guy who plays next to J.J. Watt up front. We have no idea. In our minds, it's just J.J. Watt, J.J. Watt, J.J. Watt. So how about we get J.J. Watt, and Danny Shelton? Just give him some help. Obviously, people do have their concerns about Danny Shelton, but I'm very, very much less concerned. If he's up front with J.J. Watt, your learning curve is significantly lessened to a large degree because you're not going to be seeing a lion's share of the attention, at least to give somebody, at least to have J.J. Watt have somebody up there that can do their job and maybe sort of beat a man, and help him play defense. So that's me.
Well, I guess that's an interesting pick. I never thought of it. They did sign Vince Wilfork this offseason.
You're right.
And they drafted Lewis Nix from Notre Dame last year in the 3rd round, which is a huge value at that point.
That's true.
But I guess I can't say that's a bad pick or a bad fit. I was going to go Todd Gurley. He hasn't been picked yet. And Arian Foster is a very good running back for the 11 games he'll have him, but he's always dinged up. And behind him, I know they have, I think, Alfred Blue, who was a backup for the Seahawks, and then they went over there. They just don't have anyone with any real proven production behind him, I guess. And that's where I would maybe look at Gurley, where he's that big bruiser back, and if you can get him in that one-cut offense to kind of get downhill, they're doing a little more of the man and less zone stuff. They're getting away from when Kubiak was there and with Bill O'Brien there now. But I think if you put Arian Foster and Todd Gurley in the same backfield, with the insurance policy that Arian's there beforehand, regardless of his injury situation, I think that's a pretty good spot to be in. But honestly, the Danny Shelton thing, I'd never even thought of it. I haven't seen it. I didn't think about it. So I guess if you're going to have someone teach someone with weight issues how to play nose tackle, then Vince Wilfork was your guy. But yeah, that's an interesting pick for sure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't know if Danny's going to be here, but say they get to this situation and however stuff works out, Danny's there. Just in my mind, it'd be kind of hard to turn that down. But at the same time, with not having a backup or an heir to Arian Foster, Melvin Gordon or Todd Gurley right there, you take one of those two. You can't go wrong there either.
Yeah, Houston's in an interesting spot, that's for sure. I know I saw that Kuiper and McShay had Philip Dorsett mocked at 16 the other day, and I was like, well, I know that everyone likes all these wide receivers, but I don't know how Philip Dorsett could be in the middle of the first round even. But they get paid more than I do to do this, so I don't know.
I think he could. I mean, depending on how stuff falls, you'd have to overlook some pretty interesting. It's going to be a tough decision, and I like Philip Dorsett a lot, but you're thinking about where you're picking him, and obviously he has first round value. But if Danny Shelton or someone or Trey Waynes or something like that's fallen, right, and Philip Dorsett is the guy on your board at that point, you're in it's an interesting conundrum now because now you're like, well, I really do like Philip Dorsett, but that's because we didn't think we had a chance, and of seeing Trey Waynes right here,
right,
or Danny Shelton right here. So I think this draft, the first round of this draft, it's gonna be crazy. It's because it's predicated on what everybody like. It's so predicated what every team does in front of the team picking next, and those decisions can alter it so many different ways. And even Kuiper, McShay, and every other analyst and expert out there, however we want to break this down, one domino changes alters the rest of the entire first round.
Yeah.
And we don't know when that that new piece is taken out of place, to say. And we have to see. All right, up next, we have the Chargers.
Yeah, and San Diego's in a interesting spot too, because I think, like we mentioned last night, the Phillip Rivers trade has kind of been swept under the rug. It's no longer a consideration. So they're in an interesting spot because he's not a huge need, but as far as we're going right now, Dante Fowler is still on the board. So he's there, but where I think they would go at this spot is they take the top center in the draft. Last year, after Nick Hardwick got hurt, who had been with Phillip Rivers, I think since they were drafted together, so like 10 years, they struggled really badly at the end of the year. They even lost to the Chiefs with Chase Daniel as their quarterback. And they missed getting out in the playoffs because they couldn't win the last week of the year. So I think if you take Cameron Irving, someone who showed at Florida State that he can be put into a pro offense right now and make all the communications and play very well at center, I think that's the pick. And kind of try and make Phillip as happy as you can if he's not. But I don't know. I guess I'd take Cam Irving to solidify that offense and to really kind of – you don't miss by taking Cam Irving. There is no potential of missing there. So,
okay, I agree with you, but you took my pick for my next pick. I was going to take Cameron Irving for the Chiefs after Rodney Hudson's no longer there. But real quick before we continue, Sam Green had 2 questions for you first. You said that you think the Bears might trade down. Who do you think a potential trade partner would be?
From what I've heard, if Mariota gets past the Jets, or even gets to the Jets, the Saints are going to be looking to move up because they have those 2 first-round picks. They have 13 and 31. So if there is probably a trading partner there, it's probably the Saints. And I don't know if they give up both firsts or like a first this year and next year, but probably New Orleans is who we're looking at there.
Okay, and the second question was which running back goes off the board first, Gordon or Gurley?
Oh, I think Gurley probably goes first. I would take Melvin first, just because Willis McGahee turned out pretty well for being a hurt running back getting drafted in the first round. But Todd Gurley is probably more like the man's man football player, where he's like, well, I don't care if you're a 290-pound D lineman in front of me. I'm going to run into you. And that's fine, but that style doesn't last very long in the NFL as it is, much less if you're coming off a bum knee. So I think Gurley probably goes off the board first, but I would probably take Gordon first.
Okay. All right, so we're going to continue next pick, the Kansas City Chiefs, and you left me without my pick in Cameron Irving. So thank you very much.
Give him a receiver.
You said a receiver?
Yeah.
No, they spent all that money on Mr. Macklin, and I saw some people go like, "Oh, they're going to take Dorial Green-Beckham." Like, Andy Reid's not going through the whole TO thing again. So, okay, he's not going remotely near anybody with character concerns, even if depending who you are, those concerns may be overblown. I don't see that happening in Kansas City. I'm probably gonna go. Did you take Andreas Pete already?
Yeah, I took him at 13.
You did. I'm gonna go DJ Humphries then.
Okay.
They have to fix the line. They have to continue to fix that line, and especially when you lost a huge piece in the middle of that line, and Rodney Hudson, who was pretty darn good. The Raiders definitely moved up in the world, stealing that guy. So yeah, I'm just gonna have them address the line. I don't think, I think their biggest concern as far as defense goes is giving Tamba Ali whatever he wants, and they'll be okay.
DJ Humphries is a tough pick there. I can't knock you for the talent at the position. they just drafted Eric Fisher first overall 2 years ago, and they had moved him from right to left. I don't know if DJ Humphries can play right tackle. He only weighs like 300 pounds.
Mhm.
He played most of the year like 275, which is really astonishing if you think about it. Again, here, if this is a scenario, Dante Fowler is still there, and
True.
they do have Houston and Holly and D Ford. Tama Holly was the first over or their first round pick in 2006, so he's getting a little long in the tooth. And Justin Houston, as far as I know, is still only on that franchise tag. So really, if you're looking at it, you could be a couple years away from being away from both of them. So I go maybe Dante Fowler or Kevin Johnson or Byron Jones, someone to help the pass rush in the secondary, or an Eric Rowe I've seen from Utah who can play safety and corner. And with the unfortunate problems that Eric Berry's having, they do need help at safety. So that could be another place to go.
That's very true. I didn't even think about that. And when I was talking about pay the man, I forgot. It's Justin Houston that needs to be paid, not Ali. So I knew it was, yeah, I knew it was one of the rushers, but
they could pay both of them, really.
Yeah, but like you said, one of them's getting a little long in the tooth. The younger one needs to be paid expeditiously. All right, so up next you have the Cleveland Browns with their second pick in the first round.
All right, so if I'm the Cleveland Browns, so I took we got Rashad Perriman in the first round. And Danny Shelton's off the board, so that's another kid that could have been taken. Oh, man. Browns are hard. Maybe they look at Melvin Gordon. I've seen some stuff with some running backs. They have, like, I think their best back is like a fourth-round pick from last year as a rookie.
For Terrence West.
Yeah. Man, I don't even know where to go. I had Shelton and Perriman going there, but so I don't know. Maybe this is somewhere where with Pettin and defense, they're in that 3-4, but they run a lot of hybrid stuff. Maybe this is somewhere where you see like Shaq Thompson come off the board.
Right.
Where he's somewhere who can and do a lot of things. He's kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none. He was recruited as a safety, played there for a year. He was a 5-star recruit as a safety, and they moved him to outside linebacker, and he was an All-American there. And they had him play running back a couple weeks this year, and he was a Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Week at running back. But he's one of those guys where, and I mentioned this in the article, like he doesn't like if he doesn't fit your scheme, you don't have the right scheme. But he doesn't really fit anywhere, so he's kind of like a luxury pick. And the Browns are pretty good up front, but without any like glaring, obvious needs. Maybe it's like Byron Jones to help with the corners, but I take Shaq Thompson here. Carlos Dansby's not very young, and maybe they see him as a strong safety. And Dante Whitner isn't very young either. So I don't know. The Browns are kind of like you don't know what to do because they don't know what they're doing. But I don't know. So I'll give him Shaq here. I'll give him a little piece to play with. But and like we mentioned earlier, I'm going to be happy if like 4 of these picks are right between the 2 of us. So
at least I think we hit on one, right? So I think we hit on Jameis. So
well, that means that he's not going to go there though. That's the problem.
Oh man. All right. So you're going with Shaq Thompson, right?
Yeah.
All right. With the Eagles, I'll make this quick. Going Byron Jones. I think the love affair from Chip Kelly is real. And you already have Byron Maxwell. And who's the other one? Thurmond. Byron Jones gives you Thurman's exceptional in the slot. Byron Jones gives you, a young guy that could be out there as your number 2 guy on the outside. And athletically, he's going to be fine. You just got to teach him, and he's going to need his reps. But again, athletically, that's going to be somebody you got to combat. The Des Bryants of the world, and you want to go chase after Deshaun Jackson, things like that. Little kid, go do it. Sick him out there and go do it. Knock yourself out.
Well, and this is kind of a luxury pick because no one really knows what Chip Kelly is doing either.
No.
So in 3 years, he'll either be the smartest guy in the league or he'll be out of a job. But if until he gets a quarterback, he's kind of going to be looking elsewhere. So that wouldn't surprise me at all. And with the fail they had, with Kerry Williams and Patrick Chung in the secondary, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see them address that.
Like, they were just horrible back there. Okay, you're up next, and we are 21st pick, the Bengals. We're making progress.
Oh, Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, so I'm going to go with a name here that isn't necessarily it's been thrown around in the draft Twitter community, but you don't hear much about it from ESPN. I'm going to go with Preston Smith. He's a defensive end
I like
out of
that.
Mississippi State. He's like 6'5" and 275 pounds. A really good pass rusher. Just a great big physical D lineman, good against the run. And the Bengals are a team where they draft to their type. If you look, I don't think they have any defensive ends on their roster like under 6'5" or 6. They get their fit what they want at a position, and they'll load up at it. So Smith fits that mold. Carlos Dunlap, I think, is getting pretty close to his contract. Maybe they're looking to move on from him. So you get a replacement there. They just re-signed Michael Johnson, but after his year in Tampa Bay, I wouldn't be depending on him for production. So I go with Preston Smith here, and they add some more talent to that defense until they can get another quarterback other than Andy Dalton to win a playoff game.
Okay. We're with the Bengals. As much as I don't want to do this, I guess I'm going to go Landon Collins.
Yeah, their secondary is – I mean, they've got like Reggie Nelson back. They have this kind of –
Oh, no, not Landon Collins. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking a couple picks ahead. I apologize. I think no, it wasn't Landon Collins. What was I looking at?
Jalen Collins?
No. I was not thinking Jalen Collins. Yeah, I had Jalen Collins, I think, next. Where was it? Good gosh. See, we're getting further in here. You already took Melvin Gordon, right?
Nope. I don't know if they take him with Gio.
No, I don't think they take Melvin. Malcolm Brown.
Okay, no, he's a penetrating 3 technique, and with Gino coming off the injury, a second year, he may never be quite what he was. And D'Amato Pekka is getting old, so yeah, Malcolm Brown's not a bad pick there at all.
Sorry, I lost all track of what I thought I was doing.
No,
You're up next with the Steelers.
At 22?
Yeah, at 22 with the Steelers.
Okay, so with the Steelers, I'm going to give them Kevin Johnson. They need all sorts of help in the secondary. They lost Ike Taylor. He retired. Troy Polamalu retired. They're a couple years off of Ryan Clark being there. And they have Cortez Allen. They lost Keenan Lewis to the Saints 2 years ago. So the only corners that they had that had developed, Cortez Allen's still there, but they need corners real bad. That they kind of got lulled to sleep with their we've had the same starting 11 players on defense for 5 years in a row, so we don't need to address it ever. And they kind of got away from them, and they all got old real fast. So you give them a little bit of injection of youth and talent in the secondary. And Kevin Johnson's really intriguing because he's really skinny. He's up 15 pounds from his playing weight up to 190. But he's long and he's physical. And he kind of plays with that swagger, which the Steelers kind of haven't had in the last couple of years. So to get someone with a chip on his shoulder, he went to Wake Forest, wasn't very highly recruited. So give him someone like that and say, here, yeah, go play. We need someone to cover Steve Smith. We need someone to cover A.J. Green. And now maybe with Perriman in Cleveland. So they need someone to cover, and Johnson's looking to play and prove himself wherever he goes. So I think that'd be a good fit.
Okay. I definitely agree. It has to be a corner. Gosh, their secondary is horrible. All right, on to the Lions. I know they picked up Haloti Ngata, and that's supposed to make a lot of people feel better about Sue leaving. That's just one defensive tackle. That does not make me feel safe inside or nice, warm, and fuzzy at all. If I am the Lions, I probably would go ahead and, because you have Ngata next to him, I'd probably be okay with Eddie Golden from Florida State, only because you have Ngata next to him. If they lost Sue and didn't get Ngata, I wouldn't be going Eddie Goldman. But since you have Ngata, you have somebody there kind of to guide him and teach him how to be a pro and be behind him, to have a foot up his butt when needed.
Right.
I think that's a great mentor to have. For it's not a talent issue with Eddie Goldman. So
Yeah. When he's a DC kid, right?
yeah,
So I mean, yeah. So as far as he goes, weight's been an issue with Florida State. I think he probably plays a little better at 320 than at like the 335 that he weighed in at the combine. Maybe this is a place where Malcolm Brown goes to, or you mentioned earlier Melvin Gordon could go here. They lost Reggie Bush. They only have Joik Bell left at running back. But yeah, I can't fault you at the talent for Eddie Goldman. Um, but yeah, like you said, he's got some issues as far as motivation and keeping that weight down and stuff. So maybe playing for a guy like Caldwell, who's well respected, and then you get someone like Haloti, who's a professional in there, and that'll motivate him. Those are two real big defensive tackles in the middle. No one's going to run against that.
and I think and the only reason I'm going there instead of Melvin Gordon being right there, and that would be a wonderful thing. I mean, we saw last year that the strength of their defense is those guys up front. With Sue leaving, you can't afford for your strength not to be your strength anymore. It needs to be your strength. If that's what you committed to, for that being your staple on that side of the ball, in my mind, you have to make sure that if that's your staple, that's your signature, that doesn't ever, it doesn't ever lack. Because if that's what you're good at, that's what you're known for, and you can't really do it anymore, what good are you?
Right.
That's you use that to kind of make up for the stuff behind it. So if they're the tip of the sword and they're not as sharp anymore, you're gonna go back to 2 years ago when you were inconsistent and now you got less talent up front. So up next, we have the Arizona Cardinals. It's your turn, right?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think we got switched up, but it doesn't matter. So I'm going to give him Randy Gregory. The slide stops here. Uh, Randy Gregory probably should be like a top 10 talent. He's got these like weight issues, and like we mentioned earlier, he's got these like mental problems potentially. Not to put that on him, but he's got his weight is a major issue. He weighed in at the combine at 235. He was listed at Nebraska at 255, but I know there were workouts where they said he was like 218 pounds at some draft workouts. And it's like you can't play in the box at that weight. And stopping the run isn't his forte either. So it's not like he can well, I'm really light, but this is what I'm good at, so I can like kind of get away with it like Beasley. But Gregory is, until he can put on some weight, he's a specialist. And Arizona, despite having that really good defense, doesn't have like a dynamic pass rusher. So maybe Randy Gregory gives him that, maybe at least initially, just like a sub package kind of luxury guy. But nonetheless, I don't know. I think he adds a lot to the defense.
I would agree. They have Calais Campbell, and as great as he is, there's not that guy outside of him. And you got to think about it. You just lost the other guy, the closest guy to being that guy in Dockett. He's not there. So now Calais has become the sole premier pass rusher out there. I definitely see Randy Gregory. I was going to say Melvin Gordon, but when you think about you're in that division, you can't afford to lack it. It's a strength. You can't afford to be the one defense in that division that can't get after the passer. It's just not going to go well, especially with two of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league athletically.
Right.
You have to deal with twice. It's hard enough to chase those two with elite pass rushers. It's a world's difference when you don't have any pass rushers. And they're allowed to just run around as they so please when everyone's covered, and they get to take off for 60, 70, 80, 90 yards, and you just have to watch. So
you can't hit him too hard, otherwise you'll get penalized. So it does.
And the other thing, you got to catch those two to hit them, which is
Right.
80% of the battle. One of them runs in circles, the other one has the strides of a of a sprinter. Real quick question for Matt Breeze. If you're Marcus Mariota, what team do you hope trades up to get you?
I think New Orleans is a good spot for him. Sean Payton's a really good offensive mind. Drew Brees is as good of a teacher as you're going to find. And if you look at the teams who can really use a quarterback, Tampa Bay gets Winston. Tennessee is in a great spot. Jacksonville's got Bortles. Oakland has Carr. The Redskins have Griffin. The Jets have Geno, which I think Geno can still be a decent quarterback. So then you're looking at, well, the Bears, who just lost Brandon Marshall and Matt Forte and Martellus Bennett are both sitting out of workouts right now. So they're not looking too great cohesion wise that way. So I think the Saints, you're not going to be forced to play, for at least a year, if not two. And as we've seen with Aaron Rodgers, the teams that can afford to do that with these elite prospects, they take advantage of it, and then they're able to capitalize on that, and they're put that elite prospect in an elite situation rather than Jameis Winston, who's going to be the day one starter for probably the worst team in the league.
Right. You get to avoid all the growing pains with the guy. You get to keep him in the lab and continue to work with them behind closed doors. There's no pressure. And, when you're done, you open the oven, you let him out, and, hopefully it works out as well as it worked out for Aaron Rodgers if, he gets a team trades up to get him that already has a quarterback in place. All right, up next, we have the Carolina Panthers. And one of my friends is going to be very mad at me because he loves Landon Collins. He's going to have to get over it. It has to be a tackle here. That offensive line is pure trash in Carolina. You took Lyle Collins already.
Yeah.
Brandon Scherf is gone. Andreas Pete is gone as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my decision, I guess, is between Cedric Ogbuehi.
I think it's Ogbuehi.
Ogbuehi. I'm gonna ride with you here. We're gonna go with Cedric Ogbuehi, and if I'm wrong, it's your fault. And
hey, that's okay.
Or Jake Fisher, and I'm going to go with Ogbuehi. I'm gonna go with Cedric. I'm gonna go with the big guy from Texas A&M.
Cedric.
You just have to, man. Like, you can't keep having a quarterback back there with no protection. Carolina's not that much different than Washington in that regard. They don't have an NFL offensive line either.
And I know, I saw a stat during the season that absolutely I couldn't believe it. So I think it was 25 teams out of the 32 teams in the NFL have a first-round offensive tackle on their team. Not necessarily that they drafted, but someone who was drafted in the first round to play offensive tackle on their team. Carolina didn't have a tackle on their team that had been drafted.
Yeah, that's a horrible list to be on.
And
horrible list.
And you have Cam Newton, who's one of the greatest weapons in the league if you allow him to stay healthy, and if he's not flipping his truck or like hurting his ankle and stuff. But so I mean, like if he can't get out of the way, I know one of my friends that played here with me is a Panther fan, and he is beyond frustrated because Cam can't do anything because he doesn't have Williams and Stewart to hand the ball off to anymore, and he was real mad that Steve Smith got left. So then, not only does he not have weapons, he doesn't have the protection to throw to these kids either. So I don't think he complains in the slightest to get an offensive tackle. They signed Mike Ower, who isn't very good. I mean, like, he's better than like Byron Bell maybe, but like the Titans gave up on him, and that doesn't say a whole lot. So yeah, Cam will take all the help he can get.
I just think, it's just one of those things where, some people are like, need don't force a pick because of need, but at some point, like after I felt compelled if I was Carolina that I had to get a tackle. After that stat that you just shared, they have to be out of their friggin' minds and just not care about Jarrell Newton if they don't get someone up there to protect them. And yes, the full government is needed when your organization has done you that dirty. Like, you have one of the best young quarterbacks in the league, and you don't care about his livelihood?
Like, okay, I talk about this all the time. They, as an offensive lineman, they're paying these quarterbacks like $130 million or these obnoxious amounts of money, but like not investing any money in the offensive line. So, and you can see what the Cowboys can do. They put all this money onto Romo, but you can see what they do with an offensive line that has investment in it. They make DeMarco Murray a average running back turning into all of a sudden an elite running back. And with Romo having the time back there to throw, he played all year with a broken back and didn't have an issue because he didn't get touched. So, I don't know. It's always been frustrating to me as a lineman. Like, none of these teams invest in a line. But Yeah, so they got to do something for Cam. He's dying.
I mean, he just has to. Like, man. Okay, up next, your Ravens, and I think, oh my goodness, this sounds like.
Okay.
Hey, look, it sounds like some Ozzie Smith, usual, typical draft luck right here. Because who's available? Who's available?
Only the best running back in the history of the best running offense in college football history. No, yeah, I think if this happens, and even though like Bud Dupree is still on the board and Dante Fowler are both still on the board here, Ozzie Newsome is putting on tennis shoes and sprinting to the podium to draft Melvin Gordon. They've got to do it. It's kind of a luxury pick, but when you look at it, like you had a great year from Justin Forsett. In all seriousness, he had a great year, but he is like 30 years old, and I know that he doesn't had many carries, but I don't see like just your body as you know. Justin Forsett clearly was no special running back anywhere else before Baltimore. So I don't know if you try and like capture that lightning twice by depending on him. They also, I think, they cut Bernard Pierce. They drafted Lorenzo Taliaferro from Coastal Carolina last year, but again, nothing that you can depend on. So I think here you give Melvin Gordon that offensive line, you give him Joe Flacco, and he ran for 2,500 yards at Wisconsin with I'm a huge mark for, but with Joel Stavie at quarterback, imagine what he can do with some actual weapons on the outside and a quarterback who can take the pressure off of him. So I don't think they hesitate at all. And I'm marking this down. If they draft Melvin Gordon, I'm getting on the internet and I'm ordering that jersey the next second. This is a complete homer pick for me, but it makes all the sense in the world, and I'd be beyond ecstatic if this actually happens.
But see, this is the thing. Like, for like Baltimore, Seattle, San Francisco, or like New England, teams like that in the first round, they're typically not constrained by the same rules as other teams are because of the way that they construct their roster. Because whether we know the people, whether we know the depth guys, their names or not, that's on us if we don't know them. But their organization is fully confident in the fact that their number 2 and number 3 guys, they're only number 2 and number 3 because of the number 1 guys. And when the number 1 guys do go down, a lot of the times for the really good teams and really good organizations, you don't notice it.
Right.
And yeah, typically that's how Baltimore stays with the type of talent they have is they address their needs throughout the rest of the draft. It's not about a lot of those teams, like the draft starts for them after the first round. Like it's all luxury in the first round for those guys. Their draft starts in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th. They're still getting quality picks in the 6th and 7th rounds.
Right.
Where other bad teams, it's 1st, 2nd round or bust. Like the last 4 picks are irrelevant, and that's why I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Okay, up next I have the Dallas Cowboys. Lucky me. What am I gonna do there? You have Cole Beasley, so I'm not thinking about Philip Dorsett here. Yeah, you still got Dez. I like your wide receivers. Now you do need a running back, but if Melvin or Todd are off the board, I don't think you have to take one right here. There's still going to be quality running backs in the 2nd round. But what you do need is someone that can accidentally get after a quarterback or on purpose. That would work too. So in our scenario, Dante Fowler is still available, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you find a way to make that work. Yeah, it might not be conventional, but in this day and age with how teams spread out defenses and pass, how often are teams really in their 3-4 or 4-3 base defense anyway? A lot of times you spend most of your time in your nickel or your dime, so it's irrelevant. Like some people are like, oh my goodness, that's a bad fit. It's a 4-3 team. Well, you're a team with a trash defense. Find a way to use a special player. You get Dante Fowler, even if it's Randy Gregory. But I think you took Randy Gregory already, right?
Yeah, to the Cardinals.
Okay. So Bud Dupree's gone as well, right?
No, he's still here.
Okay, it's a no-brainer. I'm still looking at Dante Fowler, and I find a way to make that work. Even if your base defense now becomes your sub, get over it. Like I don't care, get over it. Put his hand in the dirt. It's your problem to have, but it's at least it's a good problem. Last year,
Right.
you didn't have anybody to rush the pass rusher. Greg Hardy's out for 10 games. So how about you have Dante Fowler, you get him going, so when Greg Hardy gets back, you have 2 NFL pass rushers. That's 2 more than you had all of last season.
Right. So, all right, so at 28, I have the Denver Broncos. They're kind of another one of those teams where they're in a luxury kind of position. They went to the AFC Championship game. No, the semis. They got beat by the Colts. But so they're a playoff team. This is the last year that Peyton's probably going to play. There are no running backs here that really kind of like fit the range. And there really are no wide receivers here other than like Dorial Green Beckham that fit the range. But with someone with prior weed concerns, I'm not drafting them to Denver. I'll tell you that right now. So what I do is you look at their defense, and Von Miller is there, and their defensive ends, I think, are Derek Wolfe and DeMarcus Ware, who is, like I said, a little long in the tooth. They signed him for big money last year, and he did play pretty well. But in this scenario, I don't see how I'm kind of amazed that we let him fall. I think Bud Dupree goes here. Someone who could have as much upside as any player in this draft, period. If you let him learn from DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller how to use his hands, for the love of God, use your hands. I saw a meme on Twitter the other day for Bud Dupree. It was Will Ferrell. I don't know what to do with my hands. He is so good, and he hasn't scratched the surface of what he can do if he learns how to play defensive end. So I think this is the perfect spot for him. You're not asking him to cover in their 43 scheme. Just let him rush the passer and let him be big and athletic and learn from two of the best, one of the best in the league right now and one of the best ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's that simple. You have DeMarcus Ware. You got a guy where he doesn't know how to use his hands, but athletically, he checks every single box. So you get him and you attach him to DeMarco Ware's hip until DeMarco Ware is no longer on your team. It's that simple. And, when you get into your sub defenses and if and when DeMarco needs a breather, you put the kid in there. What did you learn this week? Now come out and let DeMarcus go back in there. Okay, it's late in the game. Let's have some fun. Vaughn, come down here. DeMarcus, come down here. Everybody, to the quarterback we go. And they need it. Like, we saw how good their defense was last year when they were able to get after the passer. And with nobody really, you can't ever really count on Aqib Talib or TJ Ward for that matter. That kind of was their strength last year, was their ability to get after the passer. You can't afford to change that. You can't afford for that to fall off. And any slight bit, the last thing you want is for DeMarcus Ware. With older players, you never know when they wake up and it's not there anymore. So you don't want to be caught in that position when, DeMarcus, hopefully this doesn't happen, starts to decline and there's nobody there. If you have a Bud Dupree and he starts to decline, you can kind of keep that window open a little bit longer. For DeMarcus, at least, with go pull him out, let Bud give him a breather, but it gives you an impact player. On to the Colts. What do the Colts do? You look at their defense, look at their team.
It's real soft.
It's very soft. So I think we go with the Landon Collins. I'm not a Landon Collins fan, but I mean, you had LaRon Landry. So, I mean, obviously, if you're already that bad off at life at that position, at least there's hope for Landon still. So get him, teach him, groom him, and at least you got a young guy back there to, try to build around. I mean, you got one of the best corners in the NFL right now. If you could stick him behind one of the best corners in the NFL and just let him hit and know that to a large part, his coverage responsibilities, you don't rely on him to be that guy. You never stick him in single high and be like, do your best Earl Thomas impersonation. Landon Collins would be fine. You got a whole lot more Dante Whitner to his game, so don't make him do stuff he can't do. Let him do the stuff he's good at. Run around and smack people. Hopefully not draw too many fouls, but just be able to be that enforcer that they need. As you said, it's a soft defense. When Vontae Davis is one of your hardest hitters in that secondary, and I love Vontae, but he's an athletic marvel, similar to his brother. They have superhero DNA. You can't count those two, and your corner shouldn't be the hardest hitter. Your corner should never be the enforcer on your secondary.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
You can't be the best cover guy and the hardest hitter. And if he is, there's problems. So to the Green Bay Packers, what are you doing?
Okay, so well, I live in Wisconsin. I am not a Packer fan, but I'm surrounded constantly by questions about what are the Packers going to do? What are the Packers going to do? And they're at 30, so we have no idea. It all depends on who drops them. In this scenario, you're probably looking linebacker because they let go of AJ Hawk. They have Sam Barrington in the middle, who was like a sixth round pick a couple years ago, who played pretty well. They got rid of Brad Jones, who drew a lot of ire from the Green Bay faithful. Julius Peppers played better than what I expected him to. They moved Clay Matthews inside, actually, which was huge. Clay Matthews really kind of developed and exploded as an inside linebacker, letting him use his athleticism and range. So what I'm going to do, as much as a luxury that is, Clay is probably like your third down nickel backer at this point. So on first and second down, you want him on the outside with Julius Peppers. I'm going to give the Packers Stephon Anthony. To me, he's probably the best fit for this 3-4. Capers attacks a lot. And Anthony's probably as athletic as any of the true inside linebackers here. I know a lot of people want Denzel Perryman because like he wore number 52 when he went to Miami, so he's going to be good, I guess. He's a build-up hitter at 235 pounds. As physical and tough as he was in college, NFL running backs are 240 pounds. Like you don't want your linebacker weighing less than them. So I give them Stephon Anthony. He's like 6'2", 245. He runs around. He's real athletic, and he allows Clay to kind of stay outside. And they can use Clay in a lot of different ways. And they can even move him back inside if they don't want Barrington covering. But for right now, with what the outside rushers have shown, you got to give him an inside linebacker. And I think Stephon Anthony, although he isn't like the sexy name like Denzel Perryman, I think Anthony ends up being the best pro out of that group.
All right, Teron Davenport is somewhere smiling right now. Stephon Anthony is one of his guys, and a part of me died inside because for selfish reasons, for fandom reasons, I needed that name to be around later in the draft so I could enjoy Stephon Anthony for my team. But for Green Bay, I think that's probably the best pick at that time. Obviously, they took Devontae Adams when they didn't really need him.
The Packers roster is one of the best in the league.
But they do need defense, and with AJ Hawk being gone, and AJ Hawk, I think it's important to remember AJ Hawk was there before stuff got good in Green Bay, and the end of his career is when stuff did get good. People should remember AJ for the long years at the beginning of that journey for what he was. He was tremendous for them. Obviously, probably one of the best inside linebackers they ever had. But you have to address that position. The fact that you had to move Clay inside means you didn't have inside backers.
And that takes away from Clay being your best pass rusher too.
Yep, it hurts. Like you said, Julius exceeded many people's expectations. But if you have Julius and Clay, let them do what you're paying them to do. They're not getting paid the big bucks to drop back and cover. They're getting paid to go smash a quarterback. Let them do that. And if you don't have people, the two guys inside to at least hold their own, you have a huge problem in the middle of the defense. There's a reason they haven't beaten NFC West teams lately. Soft in the middle. You have to address that. That's kind of an issue. So with that, I'm on board with your pick. And on to the New Orleans Saints at 31. Wow. It's crazy. I'm going Jalen Strong.
Okay.
And the reason I'm going Jalen Strong is because you already lost Kenny Stills, but you got the uber dynamic Brandon Cooks last year. So with that, I can look Philip Dorsett in the eye and go, I don't need you. I have a more physical version of you in Brandon Cooks. So I'm going to be able to sleep okay. Marcus Colston's not going to last forever. And, you already used that word soft. Really? I can't think of an offense more appropriate. Like you're trying to change the mentality of your offense now. Obviously, we're getting two running backs. You want to try to impose your will now. Go get you a guy that can high point the football, make contested catches, become a red zone threat, and let the other guys, make the explosive plays to a degree downfield. But go get you somebody to be that possession guy that Drew Brees does need, or whoever's going to succeed Drew Brees in the future. you have a good base in Jalen Strong and Brandon Cooks and whoever they add, but you have to go get a guy because Colson's not going to last forever. And he's been kind of falling off slowly but surely the past couple of years. You can't afford for him this to be the year when he absolutely kind of just disappears as a whole and there's nobody there physically. You have to have that, especially in that division. We have to deal with Carolina twice. That's a physical defense. Atlanta, they're going to try to turn themselves into a version of Seattle where physicality is going to become a staple. That's what they want it to happen. Once they get to that point, they want to become a physical defense. So you can't continue to be soft and all razzle dazzle on offense. Go get you guys that can make tough contested plays in traffic. And I think Jalen Strong comes off the board here.
Yeah, and I was going to make that point too about he's Marcus Colston 2.0 really. And when the Saints offense was as high powered as it was, Colston was their go-to guy. So you got those other kind of complementary players around there, but you need that bigger possession receiver for Breeze to get to. Plus, with Breeze being a little smaller quarterback, having a bigger target doesn't hurt, and Strong is one of the bigger wide receivers in the first round in that discussion. So I think it's a pretty good pick.
Thank you very much. You have the last pick in the first round, the New England Patriots. What is Bill Belichick and the Super Bowl champs going to do?
Okay, so they kind of one of those teams too. They do what they want, and you can say whatever you want, but they don't care. They can be mocked. They took a kid who was thought to be like a second-round pick with a torn ACL last year in the first round. They could go a few different things here. I think they go defensive line. They lost Vince Wilfork, so I'm not going to give them a nose tackle, but they're going to look to retool that defensive line. I think one thing they do, there's a couple ways. I think they could go Mario Edwards from Florida State, who's got a lot of late hype coming up. He lost like 30 pounds from when he was at Florida State, but I think they'd probably go Michael Bennett. He's a quick, penetrating three-tech from Ohio State. Absolutely ate up and destroyed my cherished Wisconsin Badgers on national television. And then he continued to do the same thing against Alabama's pretty good front and Oregon's too. So someone like Bennett, who's that penetrating three technique, he gives them a little bit of versatility because, like we talked about, no NFL team just sits in their base the entire game anymore. So he gives you that guy. He can be in there as a run stopper. And New England, more so than most, switches between the 34 and 43 almost constantly. So he can be passable when they go to that hybrid scheme in the 34. But as a 43, he's a three technique who can rush the passer and get upfield and disrupt in the run game. And then you can leave him in nickel situations, and he's going to rush the passer. He's very tough. He beats guards with quickness. Sometimes he struggles with his second move, but if he hits you with that first move and he wins, it's going to be ugly. And I think that Belichick likes those kind of kids. He's also a high character guy, which I know Belichick kind of has a thing for, those high character winner guys. Bennett switched his number to 53, I believe, after they had Costa George commit suicide off of that Ohio State team. So he's kind of one of those intangible guys who happens to be a really good scheme fit and personality fit for what the Patriots want to do. And it's a luxury pick for them.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And as you said, I couldn't help to reiterate the fact that it's a luxury pick. This might be a little out the box. I'm going Devin Smith right here. One of the things that the Patriots offense really struggled to do last year, they really couldn't get vertical. In the playoffs against Baltimore, they had to go to a trick play to throw the ball downfield.
And that's against that secondary. Which
we just mentioned. They had a bunch of nobodies on that secondary, and they couldn't beat walk-ons essentially, to get vertical. So when Tom Brady was the most dangerous was when he had Randy, and obviously Devin Smith isn't Randy. But if you have Julian, you have other guys that can get separation. A guy like Devin Smith, I think a lot of people have overhyped the whole he's a 9-route guy only. I just think when you're really good at something, there's no need to show the other things you're good at when no one can stop the thing you're really, the first thing you're good at. So right. If he is a good route runner, and I'm gonna take the kid's word for it, because you can't just outrun people all the time. He made a lot of contested catches downfield, And it's a subtlety to getting open downfield. You have to learn that. You have to have that. You don't just wake up like, oh, okay, I'm gonna run. You're not gonna outrun everybody all the time, by 5-10 yards. So if you can throw that on that offense, you just won a Super Bowl with Brandon LaFell on the perimeter. Like, let that settle in right now.
Mm-hmm.
Won a Super Bowl with Brandon LaFell on the perimeter. You throw Devin Smith on that offense, all those other smaller guys become that much more difficult to defend because now the field's all the way open. Think about what it does for Gronk.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned Randy Moss, because the other person that I thought could go here, you mentioned a real big receiver, and I know we've talked about the Patriots don't care what anyone thinks. They're going to do what they want. Dorial Green-Beckham might be the most talented wide receiver in this draft, and he's sitting there, and they don't really have any immediate needs except maybe wide receiver. And, oh, there you go. There's a 6'5", 240-pound kid who runs a 4.5, and they've done well with problem children before. Randy Moss, Dante Stallworth, a few other guys. They kind of Chad Johnson even. They tuck in line because they know they're going to win. And that's another kid where drug issues aside, potential domestic abuse issues aside, this kid's an absolute animal. And having Tom Brady throw the ball to Dorial Green-Beckham might not be the worst thing either, opening things up for Rob Gronkowski in the middle.
Yeah, it would be crazy. And again, like you said, you brought up Randy Moss. What we saw that year that he had him, it changed that offense. There wasn't a defense that had an answer for Tom Brady when he was able, when the whole field was available to him. He didn't have to use,
and when he was protected.
and he was protected, to launch that ball downfield. If you were think of, it's Tom Brady. He knows how to manipulate a defense, and you have a deep threat. He can get you to forget that the deep threat's out there, which is what he did the year that Randy Moss was there. Because, come on, everyone knows Randy Moss is on the field, yet Randy Moss was running wide open by himself quite a bit.
Right.
So I love that you brought up Dorial Green-Beckham, but the fact that they have those options, why not? Like, they're in a good place. We were just talking about teams that had rosters and they're comfortable with, they don't care what we think. They're comfortable with their guys. Why not take a flyer on him? Especially if the kid, what's it called? He worked out in Arizona when Cap was doing the whole Kurt Warner's friends Exos thing. So they got to be around each other for 10 weeks. Cap's pretty much vouching for the kid. I'm sure he's not the only one that's been around. I think Bucky Brooks came out to vouch for the kid, as well as a couple other people. So it wouldn't be the first time that a kid with character concerns gets to the league and turns it around. We heard a whole bunch of nonsense when Navarro Bowman got drafted. We haven't heard a peep out of him since.
And another thing, too, we talked about, as far as that goes with people vouching for him, we've had guys in the past like Claret or was it Mike Williams from USC where they kind of faced some issues and they left school and then decided to go play. Dorial Green-Beckham went and played at Oklahoma and basically redshirted for the sake of, even if it was to repair his image, that's a lot of work that he didn't have to do. For one, it says a lot about his character, whether or not it's developed or it was there anyways. And then two, Oklahoma is a very respected program and he had no issues there. So regardless of what happened in the past, we don't know. And so if that's there, then that's dangerous, very dangerous if New England can grab someone like that.
And that was, and exactly what you said was the reason that I was saying that it's kind of similar to the Marcus Peters thing where if he was so horrible, why would your coach let you come back and work out at the pro day at the school with the rest of your former teammates? Obviously, kids make mistakes and we don't know everything that happened, but I do think that this whole character counts movement that's been happening in the NFL, it doesn't always apply to every kid that had a quote-unquote character concern. And I think a lot of them are supremely overblown. And other times, a lot of them are completely just pushed under the rug. I don't want to point one out, i.e. Aaron Hernandez, not making light. But there's always two sides to everything. So people got to keep that in mind. And that's why I was saying I could definitely see, say Peters dropped here. What if that's Marcus Peters they're taking with the 32nd pick?
It's a pretty good replacement for Darrelle Revis.
And that's all I'm saying is if all the teams that feel that they're scared or worried about the character things, those are the organizations that aren't hesitant, that have done their due diligence and they're 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 strong and they're convinced that they have a strong infrastructure in their building that they can control, even if the kid does step out of line.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the talent they get. Just think about the talent they get.
Well, and like we talked about this before with Baltimore, with when they had Ray and Ed Reed and Suggs and Nata and all those guys in there, and now with Steve Smith too. I don't think that they can take Dorial because of Ray Rice being on the Ravens and this whole domestic problem going on. But that would be another place where if it happened, it wouldn't be the weirdest thing. Baltimore's taking guys with characters. They took Terrence Cody, and as a player, he didn't work out, but he didn't have anything, that until this like owning alligators
Yeah.
incident came up. He hadn't had any issues that way. So it wouldn't surprise me if Baltimore or a team like that took him. I don't think Baltimore can. But it wouldn't surprise me if they do because Ozzie Newsome doesn't really care what people think either. So it'll definitely be interesting. This draft is very odd because there's probably like 15 or 20 true like first round players, which really means that people picking late aren't necessarily going to get a first round player. But that also means that there are going to be kids who slide because there just aren't that many picks and not everyone's going to go in order because it never happens that way. So, Cleveland, teams like that, Jacksonville, you don't know what they're going to do. So something like that, someone drops. In this scenario, Dante Fowler and Bud Dupree, who are thought to be top 10 picks, drop into the late 20s. So that's what I think this year, more so than others, there is a lot of chaos going around. There's a lot of trade talks, hot takes like crazy on Twitter today. I saw someone compared Shane Carden, the quarterback from East Carolina, to Brett Favre. I saw Omar Kelly talking about maybe whether Ryan Tannehill is worth 2 first-round picks. I saw right now, this is maybe as crazy a scenario coming up here, especially with the indecision that Tennessee may have at the top of the draft. I'm going to sit back. I got a hotel in Chicago, and I'm going to sit back and let everything happen, and then try and pick up the pieces from there because we have no idea. I think there's going to be more trades this year than we've seen in the past. And I think it's foolish for us to think that, like I said, anything that we did tonight was right because no matter what our intentions are, that's probably not how it's going to happen. And dumb football teams do dumb things and smart ones do smart things. So whether or not it'll happen, it's a complete crapshoot. I'm here to have some fun. I'm not even going to try and say like, yeah, well, I called this pick or whatever because it's not going to happen. So I'm just here to enjoy the ride and hopefully enjoy Chicago and then hopefully the Ravens draft Melvin Gordon. That's what I'm going to end
on. I'm sure you're going to have a great time in Chicago. And I think that's the biggest thing. As you said, no matter our intentions, if we're all the way wrong, we're all the way wrong. But at the same time, as crazy as this can go, if we also have we have a large room for error this year amongst any of the other years because of how crazy it's going to be. Mm-hmm. Because of the fact where you have, I don't really recall a year when so many top 10, top 15 teams were talking about being willing to trade down. And the fact that a lot of those teams are willing to trade down, I think you'd have to be a fool to not think that some of those later teams, some of the good teams, that means the price to move up wouldn't cost as much if that many people are trying to move down. So
that and more than that means too, even if those teams are trying to move down, that doesn't mean that anyone wants to move up either.
That's true.
And that kind of speaks to how this draft, unlike last year, is not super, super top heavy. All the beef in this draft is rounds 2 through 6. There's not going to be a whole lot of difference getting a second-round player from a fourth-round player to a sixth-round player in this draft. And if you're not in that top 15, chances are you're probably getting like a second-round talent. So this year, we could mock someone in the first round and they can go in the third, and that's not too. It won't be looked upon like, wow, how in the world would you think something like that would happen? Because we just don't know. This year, Dorial Green Beckham should be a top 10 pick in 95. He could go in like the 5th round. depending on if people don't want him or what's going on. I've never seen anything like that happen before, and I guess we'll all be in for a treat whatever happens. I've seen him go in the middle. I've seen him go to the Chiefs. I've seen him go in like to the Ravens, and they're like fourth round compensatory picks. I've seen him go to the Seahawks. I've seen him go to the Patriots, and more so with Randy Gregory and Shane Ray, and even Lyle Collins, warranted or not. There's going to be some major players here who don't have a concrete spot or like even like a general range in mind. So this year it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be very weird, chaotic. Chaotic's probably the best word I can give it. So
yeah, I think chaotic is a perfect word to describe this year, and I think it's gonna be unpredictable. And I think everybody that we're obviously not taking the mock too seriously. We do this because it's fun to do one. We don't do a bunch of mock drafts here. I don't really believe in it, but what you can do is make sure you get on the site to check out Owen's work. He's gone through all the position groups and kind of ranked where guys are. And as we was talking about, the fun in this draft starts after the 32nd pick in the first round. That's when all the fun truly begins, because there's going to be fifth round guys that end up outplaying the guys that go in the second and third round. And you're going to be like, well, what happened? Because said person went to a smaller school. He had no business being drafted behind the person at the bigger school. And depending on who's drafting him, you don't understand the talent. So I think it's just going to be fun. And I just want everyone to sit back tomorrow night, just enjoy it. Hopefully you enjoy what your teams pick. If you don't know the guy, get on the site, figure out. I'm sure Owen knows who they are. Follow him on Twitter if you haven't already. We're going to just sit back and enjoy it all. And next week we'll worry about jumping into who did what, how they get here. Oh my goodness, why did they select this with this person on the board? But right now, we're gonna enjoy it. It's New York. It's NFL Draft Eve.
Well, and even regardless if you agree with who they picked or not, the thing that I love about this time of year, every single team is going to get better. You're adding talent to your roster, and if you listen to any general manager talk, that's as exciting as a thing for them as they have. Who can we? They're not sitting back like, oh, I'm going to be really mad if we don't get Melvin Gordon or Todd Gurley or so and so. They're looking to see who can we add to our football team that's going to help us get closer to the Super Bowl. So it's an exciting time for everybody. Everyone, when they're done with the draft, everyone's happy with their draft. Whether or not their fans are, the teams are. So that's what it's exciting about this time of year. Teams are adding talent. They're getting better. These young men, which is weird for me now because I'm their age now, they're all having their dreams achieved. They're getting to the professionals and to see what everything happens. So it's a real exciting time of year. It's my favorite time of the year, and I'm just excited and happy I don't have any finals this weekend, so I don't have to worry about that. So I'm just going to sit and let it sink all in and enjoy Chicago and enjoy the draft and the entire atmosphere.
All right, man. I definitely look forward to the next broadcast we have, because we definitely will be talking about all of this after the dust settles. Let you enjoy your no finals. Enjoy it peacefully. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk with me and to all of those that are watching. Thank you guys so much. The next time we'll be on air in any shape, form, or fashion is next Tuesday, 8:00 p.m. on www.bliss.fm. And as always, get your mind right at mymindonsports.com. For me and for Owen and I both, you guys have a great night and enjoy the draft tomorrow. Just enjoy it. Sit back and enjoy it. We'll see you guys after the draft, and definitely next Tuesday, where we'll probably start rehashing all the craziness that happens tomorrow night, Friday night, and Saturday night next week. So thank you guys so much. Good night.
Have a good one.